So, welcome, Izzy Baldwin. Even though Isabel Baldwin is obviously how we've been promoting this particular episode, but just clarifying with you there before we hit record that you go by Izzy. And your Twitter handle, by the way, anyone who because we're going to be predominantly talking about an article that Izzy's written in the last couple of weeks relating to her experience as a female golfer and her experience of being a female in a golf club. So if you haven't read it, I suggest you do. It's very very to the point, which is what I like. There's not too much faffing around the topic. It's just a nuts and bolts of this is what your experience was. So if you want to follow Izzy on Twitter or find the article, is probably the quickest ways to go to that is at Izzy C Baldwin. So that's double Z IZZYCBALDWIN. And like I say, if you haven't read it yet, a lot of people in the golf industry have, I know, but I suggest you do because it's an education. So before we get into who you are, what you do generally, because you've got a lot more to you both than just writing about golf and golf clubs. But how's it been during lockdown for you? Has the family all been healthy and?
Yeah, we've all actually got on quite well despite being in lockdown. My dad actually went back to work this week, so that's kind of, I think we were reaching the pressure point slightly where tension was starting to rise, but that's kind of eased it a bit now. And just I'm trying to be, keep myself writing when I can, but without, it's been very hard. We've been suffering. So it's really nice to see golf is back finally this week, and football starting next week.
Yeah. I mean, football starting next week, like you say. I mean, that's for the elite game, isn't it? I mean, I noticed you posted some things last week about football and that sort of thing. I mean, as I say, I'm involved with football here in South Wales, and one of the big questions for us, which thankfully golf, on a participation level, doesn't really have to think about, is, when on earth is it going to be possible for grassroots or just county level football, rugby, hockey, all of these sort of contact sports, when's it even possible that they might be able to play again? Because every time you think, oh, will it be when this particular restriction gets removed? And then my brother said to me this morning, yeah, but what about the changing rooms? So if there's a social distance issue of, let's say it's 1 meter, there aren't many changing rooms at grassroots level where that's possible. So it just brings all sorts of things in. You just can't see an end to it for those sports. Have you
exactly. When they don't have the money.
Go on.
Oh, sorry, you just broke up there a bit.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, have you encountered any sort of information, any opinion on that? Because I know you obviously follow it, like you say, football's back, but
at the minute it's very much speculation and like opinion about what's going to happen, but no actual factual information. Because, like you say, especially grassroots football, it doesn't have the money nor the facilities, like even close to that the Premier League does, or the Bundesliga and La Liga that I've started getting in Germany and Spain, to be able to facilitate play whilst maintaining social distancing regulations. And the thing is, even once lockdown rules start to lift a bit and restrictions are eased, it's still a matter of, well, nothing's going to go back to normal straight away. So it's really worrying, actually, especially because a lot of the lower league sides here in the UK are really going to struggle financially if not able to play soon. So I think it's a really worrying future for football, especially grassroots football.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the league that my club's involved in, for example, it's a 30-game league season on inferior pitches to obviously the pro game. So if you don't start in August and get 7 or 8 matches played while there's daylight, you can't finish a football season because you're already April and May playing a lot of matches, catching up from when they get called off during the winter. So to me, the governing bodies in these sports need to try and give the clubs some sort of idea of how they're going to decide what next season looks like for them. And I feel quite grateful to be working in one of the sports that is at least been able to get its participants back out playing. Because, you know, if golf were like football and rugby and everything else with no end in sight, you know, clubs would be going to the wall as we speak. I know there's some already struggling, but you know, we'd have almost a pandemic of golf clubs closing. You know, so we've been lucky in that sense as an industry, that we're able to safely get people out. I know different countries have different regulations at the moment. You know, it's still 2 balls here in Wales. It's 4 balls now, thankfully, in England where I work. But yeah, it's certainly been an interesting time. So you've all been on top of each other in the house. I mean, my eldest moved back here just before the lockdown. So he's 22. He moved back from Bristol. So, but to be fair, we've coped all right. We've been pretty good. But I've been working throughout, so maybe it's a bit different.
Mm.
But so onto you yourself. As I said, you cover more than, you know, the dramas of golf clubs. So you're a freelance journalist. Is there any area that you don't or won't cover? I've seen you covering elections and that sort of thing on your.
I do. I do cover quite a range of topics actually, especially because I'm a young journalist. So I'm really trying to cover as many things as I can, because I enjoy a lot of. I enjoy sport, obviously, but also politics and culture. But I am mainly a sports journalist, I would say, especially golf, as we said, and football and rugby, both league and union. Being a Northern English girl, I am a big rugby league fan. But I did French, Spanish, and Portuguese at university. So I think their culture and their politics is also really important to me, and I like covering foreign affairs, particularly. Was it last October, the Catalan riots? There were protests here in England as well, so I covered them, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I bet it was, yeah. All this stuff happening on our streets now. It's obviously worrying times, but you know, you forget that various causes make this happen across Europe all the time, don't they? I mean, like you say, those Catalan riots, they were big news at the time, really, across the world, weren't they? But amazing how quickly we forget amidst all of this. But so, I mean, your article last week is obviously what prompted the timing of you know, you coming onto this particular podcast. I see that you've had a fair bit of exposure from it, because it's, like I say, it's hard hitting, but it's the type of article I think that people can say, do you know what, that's right, or I've experienced that, or I've seen that, or that type of thing. You know, for those who haven't read it yet, hopefully that you will after you listen to this, but basically it's a story of you yourself as a teenage female golfer, and what led you to quit the game for a while. Thankfully, you're now back in the game, and you know, you sort of talk about some of the things that maybe have changed for the better since your teenage experiences, but you also identify there's a long way to go. So I guess open the floor to you, really, to just speak about the article itself, and maybe for those who haven't read it yet, or those who are going to be too lazy to read it, you know, just give us a flavour of the sort of thing you talk about in it.
Yeah, well, like you said, it did end up getting a lot of exposure, which, to be honest, I was never expecting. I wasn't quite sure how well it would be received, and I was rather nervous about it coming out, because it is something quite personal. It is my own experience playing as a junior girl, and as I mentioned in the article, knowing how some members of the golf community can be towards women's golf and girls. You know, I thought it might get some negative reaction, but as you say, it was really well received, and I had a lot of comments and responses from other women who said they went through similar things when they were junior girls, or parents of current junior girls saying, "Oh, we've had similar instances." But also, I was really glad to see that there were some comments saying, "Sorry, you had an experience like this, because I actually had more of a positive experience," which is nice to see that things probably are progressing. And we are taking steps to make girls feel more welcome in golf. But I think it started off, I think, after the first day, having something like 50 likes, and with that, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, like really chuffed with 50 likes. And then Justin Rose retweeted it, and it went crazy. I think I went to bed, 50 likes, woke up in the morning, I was like, what happened? And then I saw that he'd retweeted it, which is great that somebody, you know, as famous as him, is supporting women's golf and girls golf, also with his Justin Rose Ladies tournament that he's setting up before the LET starts.
Yeah, I mean, that's been fantastic, hasn't it? And again, the exposure that's brought to the ladies' game has been huge, really, this week, hasn't it? It's been very positive, and the cash has been matched as well. Is terrific news. I mean, one of the first things that leaped off the page at me when I was reading your article for the first time was you made reference, basically, in a nutshell, you had no peer group as a teenage girl in the golf club. You didn't feel that you had a group of peers there of, you know, other teenage girls. You said that there was one or two, but they quickly disappeared. And it was really interesting to me to see when you said there was a very good proactive junior organizer or junior girls organizer that got a few of you together, but over time they pretty quickly dispersed. And that's something I've seen happen myself in clubs I'm a member of, in clubs I've worked, that our model as an industry at the moment for juniors often seems to be built around finding and keeping a really good volunteer that throws his heart and soul into it. But the second that person doesn't do it anymore, quite often all the good that they've done kind of vanishes. I mean, your peer group example, particularly for a teenager of any sort, but a teenage girl, you need that peer group, don't you? So that you go through these things together, and some of the other things that you point, you're sort of isolated from a little bit.
Definitely. I mean, I was really glad we did have such an enthusiastic junior coordinator, but it did seem like you say, like, if they then stop, you know, that all that progress is taken away. But also, I think in her case, it was that she was also fighting almost like against a brick wall from the committee point of view, to even like give the girls a chance. You know, she was always trying to implement new things, give us like certain tea times and play off junior tea. Create a blue tea course so it was easier for girls who were starting, or any junior who was starting, get into the game, to get out on the course and learn those rules. But you know, it still felt like she was facing an uphill battle almost just to get those things. So it was a really tough job for her to do. And like you say, I think I would have been around, like, been playing for 2-3 years when this happened. We did get some in-surge of about 3 or 4 girls, which was really nice. A lot of them like beginners or had parents who played as well. So it was a nice mix of abilities. There was no one who was, you know, amazingly good and didn't want to play with the beginners, or vice versa. And it was nice because we could feel confident and safe, I think is an important word to use here, to go out onto the course and play, because we had this little group, a peer group. It's a social aspect that, you know, you make friends through having this little group, and so it turns golf into something enjoyable and fun. And it really eroded element. I think I mentioned in the article that you did feel like some of the older members, particularly the men, would be watching you when you're out on the course, making sure that every single rule correctly. But my point was that if we didn't get to go out on the course and make mistakes, then we were never going to learn. But if older members are creating this environment that we don't feel confident to do that, it's this self-perpetuating cycle that means girls and juniors never feel confident to actually go out and play golf.
Yeah. I think one of the things I would say, and I read in some of the comments underneath, you know, the tweets that have gone out with your article attached and that sort of thing, is that I don't think necessarily the experience you had is still prevalent everywhere today. It certainly happens at a lot of clubs. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I think as well it's moved slightly. I mean, since I was a junior, a bit longer since you were a junior, but You know, when you were a junior, you couldn't tee off at my club where I'm a member. You couldn't tee off as a junior on a weekend day until after 2 o'clock. Well, think about that in the winter. That means you can never play 18 holes because you're in school all week, and then you can't tee off until 2 o'clock at the earliest on a weekend day. So at no point in the winter will you ever play 18 holes. You know, silly little things like that. I'm glad to say that in my experience, generally now, junior members are classed as playing members with regards to access to the golf course. How they're treated when they're on it, I couldn't attest to say that has changed at all because I have no experience of it. But at least now you can get onto the golf course, because
Yeah.
I mean some of the restrictions were crazy when I was a junior. You wonder how people kept at it, really.
Well, yeah, I think that's the main point. A lot of people probably didn't. But actually, that's a really interesting point that you're making, that your club juniors couldn't play until 2 p.m. Because I know until I think only a few years ago, new women to the club couldn't play until after 2 p.m. At my club in handicap of 36, nor could they enter competitions until they got a handicap of 36. Which, for a beginner, how are you ever meant to improve if you can't get out and play 18 holes, or can only play at certain times, and then can't play in a competition? But like you were saying, it is really important to stress that this article was very much my own personal experience. I'm not suggesting that every single junior girl has gone through exactly the same thing.
No.
Like I said, it was really nice to see Con said, I didn't have that experience, more of a positive experience. So I think it is important, and what I'm now working on for National Club Golfer is almost turning this into a series. So we'll cover articles on more positive experiences as well, and looking at golf clubs or clubs who are making sure there is an infrastructure for young girls to get into golf. So it's not all doom and gloom. But what is interesting, I think, is from reading most of the comments that there is a variety of experiences and so many different ones. Some negative, some positive, but it seems to me that at the core of every experience, to some varying degree, has been this element of some sort of obstacle, or at least an understanding that other girls are facing an obstacle, even if you haven't. And that's why I think it's a really important thing that we are now talking about it, because it's a topic that isn't taboo and it needs to be spoken about if we're ever going to see it change.
Yeah, you made reference in the article to, for example, the junior girls. They weren't able to play they could play in the competitions, but they couldn't win it, and they couldn't play in the teams. I was listening to the National Club Golfer podcast yesterday, where they were discussing the whole argument around why weren't there any ladies in the charity match in America, and you know, I forget her name, but the sort of pro that was on that podcast actually said that the same thing happened to her when she was a junior, and amazingly, the thing that stuck in my mind, she said, I played for my county team before I played for my club's ladies team. Now, something cannot be right there, can it? If that sort of thing was possible. And again, she's stressed that she's not saying that that's prevalent or it's still the case today and that things haven't moved forward. But just because they've moved forward, I think these riots we're seeing across the world now show us that just because something has moved forward doesn't mean that we should just say, "Oh, that's enough." Then we've done our bit. It's better than it used to be, and just stop pushing for for more equality and that sort of thing. Because I told you when we spoke before this episode about there was somebody very similar to your story in my golf club that I'm a member of when I was a junior. She was a year younger than me. She was a much better golfer than me. She was club champion at 12, 13 years old. She was terrific. She became a Welsh international. I lost touch with her for a couple of years and then ran into her again when she was 18 in university because she was in the same university as me. and she'd quit the game. She quit the game, and when you speak to her about why that was, the main driver of that was similar to your story. That didn't once she became a teenage girl and then a young woman, there was nobody really that she socially wanted to be going out spending 3-4 hours on a golf course with. It was all well-intentioned, supportive ladies, but they were all in their 60s and 70s. Competitions were on a Tuesday, and she now was in university and would soon be going out into the world of work, so didn't see how she was ever going to be able to even be a competitive golfer. And there were just so many things in her way that she never swung a club again. It's really sad because, like I say, she was actually excellent at the game, but it doesn't matter if she was rubbish at it. She loved it. She loved the game of golf, but all the other things drove her away, really. And she was a very similar story to you, really. But I'm just glad to see that you came back.
Yeah, I am really glad that I came back, but it's so sad and so disappointing to hear that someone like her, who sounds like she had so much promise and so much talent in the game, was driven away as well. And I think I kind of made a similar point in my article, that there was a girl who was quite a few years older than me. So when I joined, I was the youngest girl, and she was about 17, 18. So she was really good, so I didn't feel like I could play with her. But seeing her unable to compete and seeing someone who, in my mind, was so talented at golf, she was amazing. If seeing her being treated like that, and seeing her not have the opportunity that she should, with the quality that she had, similar to your friend, it's so disheartening, because you think, well, if she can't get anywhere, I'm definitely not going to get anywhere. So it is a really sad thing. And we were saying, you just mentioned Hannah Holden on the National Club Golfer podcast. I think she even mentioned, Hannah Holden, that she had a better handicap, a lower handicap than some of the boys that did get on the club team. And that's almost unfathomable, and it doesn't make any sense that someone who is the better golfer, irrelevant of gender, should have a spot on the team. And it comes again.
Arguably, or probably not even arguably, the best golfer at the club I work at is a young woman player. She's on the staff as well, but she would quite comfortably beat all the men in the club, I think. So she did turn pro for a short while. But she came back to it last year, and very quickly became the exceptional player that she is all over again. So, but now enjoys the game, and she's the type of person that will play with anyone anyway and mix with a lot of people. She's a very friendly person and very outgoing, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But again, that was someone that did stop for a while for her own reasons. But one thing, I don't want to get the quote right from your article, because I'm interested in your perspective about it, but also how you think from your perspective clubs can get away from it. So you say that that golf has gotten, with teenage girls in particular, it's got an image of being outdated, unfashionable, and a male-dominated sport. So, firstly, what makes women or young women or teenage girl golfers think that? What are the specific things, first of all, before we cure it?
I do think it is changing, this reputation that golf has, but I don't think you need to look further than most golf clubs here in the UK to see that majority of the members are over the age of 50. They are majority white, middle class, and I know personally at my club it is majority men. There's something like 540 men at my club and only 102 women, of which the men are at their total capacity of members that they're allowed according to the constitution, and the women are nowhere near, but they are only allowed 125 members actually according to the constitution. So already you have that lack of balance between how many allowed to be at the club and how many women. But I
A
think
lot of
it
clubs, what I
really
would
needs
say
to
on that,
start.
just on that one point, a lot of clubs now have, I mean, that was normal back in the day, as it were. That was normal to say this many men, this many women. What I'm glad to say from my experience, a lot of clubs are doing now is that they will say this many full playing members, full stop. So there's no sort of demarcation of this many women, this many men. So if it happened that a club exploded in female membership, it would only be constrained by the number of full playing members allowed in the club, regardless of gender.
And I think we have the Equality Act that came in 2010 to thank for a lot of the progress that we have seen in clubs, and that was a really promising step to take. But as for why golf has this reputation, as it's seen towards a lot of teenage girls, and why it might be so unpopular, I think it has to start at the top. It has to start with the coverage of the pros and the Ladies European Tour and the Ladies PGA Tour in comparison to their male equivalents, especially in the Solheim Cup. Last year, 2019, the Solheim Cup saw an attendance of 90,000, which was its highest ever. And for me, that was really popular and positive, rather, to see that a female event was so popular, because it shows that it's being given more recognition and that it is attracting more viewers, which will hopefully trickle down and boost the number of girls that want to play. Because if we're giving a platform to our female athletes and giving them the same recognition, or at least the recognition that they deserve compared to their male counterparts, then it's going to show to the young girls watching, that these are female athletes, that there are female icons that they can follow, and that will attract them to the sport. So it's almost a two-tier system, that we need to start with the top and show more female representation, which hopefully will trickle down and boost numbers at the bottom, but as well have at the bottom this support network to encourage girls to stay in the sport once they're attracted to joining.
What is the unfashionable part of it? I mean, would anything to do with like dress codes or anything come into that?
Definitely.
I don't know what your experience is with dress code, but
I mean, it wasn't the biggest negative for me, I don't think, but I think it was because I almost expected it. But things have changed, thankfully. You can now wear jeans in the clubhouse, which is
not everywhere.
Groundbreaking. Not everywhere. At my club you can, but it was the whole this idea. I think a lot of people, if they don't play golf, had this idea that you have to wear this very old-fashioned outfit, the skirts that have to be a certain length above the knee, pulling shirts with a collar or special jumpers, and it's like, well, it's not all like that. You turn on the LET and see that is not how women necessarily dress anymore. And I think at my club, what was really progressive was the fact that we can now wear sports leggings as girls and shorts. Which you think it's a sport, so of course you can wear sports clothing, but so it is nice to see that changes are being made to dress codes to make it more, I think, compatible with the era that we're living in. I think
I've thought for years on a club level, I think women get away with murder with dress code. the things that women are allowed to wear, or nothing is said that they wear in golf clubs, compared to the really stringent dress codes that are still in place, I'll be honest, in a lot of clubs in the UK. Yes, it was still restrictive, and it wasn't maybe what young women would want to wear. But, when you think that you've got a rule in a lot of clubs still to this day that, men can't wear sandals in the summer unless they wear them with socks. Who dreamt that up? He wasn't under 70 years old, I can promise you. But it was, those are the types of things. Whereas women are walking into the place in sort of fashionable flip-flop type shoes for 10, 15, 20 years. but it's still the principle is still the same. I mean, I told you the other day when we spoke about the problem with dress code for my eldest, who's now 22, but when he was 14, 15, he only owned jeans apart from his school trousers. Now, when I was his age, I had a couple of pairs of what we would deem, normal trousers in my wardrobe that would be something that was in my wardrobe that I would wear when we went out for a family meal or something like that. Now, this generation and the one below my eldest son is they don't own trousers other than their school trousers. So think, right, let's go for Sunday lunch up at the club today, and you then have, you have to have World War III because he has to put his school trousers on for a social gathering, So I think women were let off generally with the dress code thing before the men, but I struggle to find anything else in golf clubs where I think women have had the better rub of the two
Probably.
genders, because I think other than that, I mean, your article makes reference when you were a junior that there used to be a line across the floor. Was it in the snooker area or something? And women could not cross that line. Is that? I mean, please tell me that's gone now. Is it?
Oh yeah, that's gone. I think that actually went a couple of years before I joined, but like a lot of the ladies I still play with and my mum remember there was an area certain in the clubhouse that it wasn't an actual line, but it was like, this is the zone, this is the line, there's the snooker tables and the second bar, you cannot pass this line if you're a woman. And speaking to a lot of the women that I now play with, they came up with their dads or husbands, and their husbands and fathers would cross the line, but they would say, no, you've got to stay here, you can't cross this line, which is crazy. So I mean, this being taken, there is change, but that, to me, that's just archaic.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I do have some case studies that are equally as crazy as that one, but I won't mention them, because as soon as you mention these ones, that club will know it's them that I'm talking about. And I don't want to do that because they're all gone now. All of those cases, there's none that I'm still aware of that still exist in any of the clubs that I would have raised there. So, thankfully they've left that in their past. But I mean, the dress code side of it is constantly, in my job, it's constantly discussed no matter what club you're at. Whether you're at a club that's almost relaxed completely to allow everything other than beach wear, right to the ones that still, require jackets and ties. It's a constant debate because society moves a lot quicker than golf club dress codes, I find. And it'll be debated forever.
I've just realized, I'm talking about the women and saying you can watch the lady professionals to see that, golf clothing can be stylish, be old fashioned. But I'm thinking in a lot of clubs, it's probably it's the rule almost that you have to wear a collared shirt for the men to enter the clubhouse. But yet you watch the tour pros like Tiger Woods wearing, his iconic collarless Nike top to play, and there must be so many men and junior boys who want to replicate Tiger Woods' look, and why not? He's one of the best male players ever, so it's like a hero for a lot of junior boys, but they can't wear the same shirt because you have to wear a top with a collar.
Yeah, I mean,
so
most clubs, not all, but most clubs said that you could, once that became, they changed their rules, a lot of clubs. So if you could buy it in the pro shop, you could wear it on the course, was Jen. So it was acceptable on the course, but then a lot of clubs didn't drag that through into the clubhouse. So you then had to have another shirt to go into the clubhouse, that sort of thing. It was just, it's probably 15 years since that shirt came out now, and it's still today in some clubs. And this is one of the problems I think we give ourselves as an industry. So you play in your club and you've said there, they now allow jeans and they've relaxed the dress code and everything else. The problem is that there's different levels of relaxation across all of the clubs that would be in your region. So if you became a player that went to a lot of open competitions, or if you what I see is people who join golf societies and they play a different course every month. And they come to your course, and if you're one of the more strict dress codes, they turn up in all innocence in something that's not allowed. And it's easy for us to say, oh, well, you know, we sent the organizer the dress code and that sort of thing. But, you know, that's where it becomes a challenge, is that they're not being sort of argumentative, or they're not being rebellious at all. They're turning up in garments that were acceptable to the last 15 to 20 golf courses they've been to. But this one today, it's not acceptable. And that's where I think we still give mixed messages as an industry, really, where there's not parity across all the clubs of what the expectation is. I mean, if you're in a club that's relaxed, it's dress code, you could be one of those people that turns up in complete innocence to another course, and you know, you're really offending, you know, the old chap in the bar who sat in the same seat for the last 40 years, and you're not doing it on purpose. You just don't know that you're breaking a rule.
Exactly, like you just said, that you're sort of done in all innocence. They're not turning up and purposely dressing this way to cause trouble, yet they will probably be treated as if they're trying to cause trouble. We all know that for breaking the backlash you can face, and I'm not saying this is always the case at every single club, but you know, they really do come down harshly on you at a lot of places if you do break a rule or dress a certain way. And I think when I always think about not just the dress code, but the way, you know, the parity between men and women and the way junior girls or even juniors as a whole are treated, it strikes me that golf is very much stuck in a decade that we are no longer living in, that society has moved ahead in a lot of ways, especially when we talk about the way we dress. Like, jeans now are, as we were saying, people's everyday trousers. A lot of people won't have another pair of trousers that aren't jeans. Same with trainers, and being able to wear trainers in the clubhouse rather than smart shoes. Not many people my age or teenagers will have shoes that aren't trainers to wear.
Yeah.
And so society's moved ahead in that way. You know, you don't have your Sunday best necessarily, or you don't have to dress a certain way. Yeah. Whereas golf is stuck there. And I think it's because majority of the time, the people that sit on the councils at golf clubs who are making these rules and these decisions on whether we change are older. They are in their 60s or even 70s. So they are from this time where it was expectations and the societal norm. So they still expect that should be implemented at the golf club. Whereas really, what golf needs to do if it's going to survive and keep going and prosper the way it has been for so many years is that it needs to change, and it needs to keep up with the times to, you know, to attract the next generation of golfers.
Yeah, like, I could talk all day about dress code. It's because it is, and for people in my job, it is something that never goes away. It's always there, whether you're in a club that, like I said, is really relaxed, or whether you're in a club that is still quite strict on what it allows people to wear. But we have the technology nowadays to almost hold, you know, little referendums on little topics every now and again. You know, the club I work at is when everything settles down, is going to run a sort of online poll about what the members want to do with regards to weekend competitions during the winter. Because we had a bit of a debate within the club this year about were there too many competitions where you had to book versus social golf where you could just turn up and play. So, you know, we now have the technology to be able to just say, right, here you go, 650 playing members. What do you want to do? And, you know, the majority wins. And I think we're scared to do that sometimes because, like you say, you know, the responsibility at the moment seems to fall onto the 8, 10, 12 people that are on your committees or councils or whatever they're called. I think it's quite difficult. It's a difficult step for committees to give that power over to membership, though, isn't it? And I would understand that. And if I were a committee member myself, you know, who had opinions about dress code, I may be scared about what result may come out of that referendum. But you mentioned about in your article that the sort of air of being intimidated. And dress code has been the one thing that brings that to me when I visit other clubs. I worry, I didn't read the dress code before I got here. Are these white socks going to be okay today with these shorts? That sort of thing, you know. It's not an easy thing, and it's something that clubs really need to tackle. But it's almost the last thing. You know, you mentioned the jeans there. You know, I don't think those rules, were written when jeans were the sort of working garment of the blue collar worker, as it were. So the painter decorator would go to work in jeans because they were durable trousers. You know, now they weren't really worn greatly in a fashion sense, whereas now it's completely the opposite. No one goes to work in them that's in that type of job. So you're not going to have people wandering in you know, paint covered or dirt covered jeans or whatever. And the one I always hear is, if you allow that, you'll have people coming in ripped jeans and dirty jeans and everything else. Well, I've worked at 2 clubs that brought allowing jeans in during my time, and they've never seen a ripped pair of jeans since. It's just a myth, but it's changed. It feels like a big change in golf to allow jeans, as crazy as that sounds to people like you and me that probably own 80-90% of our probably trousers would be jeans. But it is one of those things, because you I think you hit the nail on the head. That is why it stays as it is, because the generation that make the most of these decisions in clubs at the moment are not of a generation that would have predominantly denim trousers as their social wear. So it's a lack of understanding sometimes. They're not saying, you know, I'm not telling my dad he would have to go to the golf club in jeans. I'm just saying that I'd be allowed to. And I think sometimes they don't quite grasp that. No, Dad, I'm not telling you that you have to go and buy 5 pairs of jeans to go to golf. It just means that I don't have to go and buy a pair of slacks to come and have a pint in the bar afterwards with you. But
definitely,
you know, it is amazing sometimes. So if you were to say, you know, I don't want to kill any of your sort of material for the articles you've got coming up, but I mean, if there were 1 or 2 things that you would say, right, these are the first 2 things within clubs that we could focus on, that we could look to do, to try and, you know, help bring this thing forward to the next step, because obviously we can't create parity of ladies tour, or, you know, creating heroes on Sky, but at base level, at grassroots level, what can we as clubs be doing to push more girls into playing, and then once we've got them playing, keep them in the club?
Well, I would like to say a change of attitude. It's not really something you can force someone to do, and I don't see that happening for every member at every golf club anytime soon. So I think the first step we need to do is to create, like I mentioned earlier, an infrastructure in which girls feel welcomed, that develop a social circle and a peer group for them, and, you know, makes them feel safe and confident to get out onto the course. So I know, and this might not be possible at every club, but I know that some clubs have started junior academies in which they will have lessons for junior girls, group lessons. And if you advertise this and almost do taster sessions, then you're going to automatically, by just having group girl lessons, create a social group for them. And it might mean, you know, creating a system with the ladies section in which a member will volunteer to take girls out onto the course, so they're playing and they're learning the rules in a way that they have almost a mentor and someone to teach them, and, you know, make them feel confident eventually to then do it by themselves. I think another thing is we need to change the way that the lady members are also viewed. And I'm not saying the way that my club operates is the same as every club in the UK towards men, the differences between men and women. But if women are seen to have more equality on the course, and the junior girls looking up will say, okay, I actually have a future here. in golf, I feature in the club, because I reckon a lot of girls will see that, you know, most of these lady members are over the age of 50. There aren't any young women. So they're probably thinking, okay, well, I feel confident now as a junior member playing with other girls my age. Well, what happens when I reach age 18? I'm not, you know, is there going to be anyone for me to play with that's going to be a similar age to me? I'm going to maintain a peer group. But also, what are my playing options? Because I know how I felt when I was thinking, considering golf in my 20s, was, well, I'm going to have a career. I'm going to be working. And the, you know, ladies' day is Tuesday. I'm not going to be able to play in a competition on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
But equally, Saturday is the men's day. So that limited 5 days out of 7 I'm working, so I might not be able to play. Saturday I can't play because it's men's day, and that leaves one day Sunday. But I think what now is happening at my club is that, so, like I think I mentioned this in the article, there are 20 spots within the ladies section that are allowed. Those ladies are allowed to play on a Saturday. So you pay your full playing membership fee, but within it was almost like we had to bargain with the men for us to be able to do that. We have to, you know, concede certain things, like we have to play with the men's index, the men's tees. Sometimes we'll get a crazy shot, but then have to play with of our handicap.
Just on that particular point, playing off the men's tees, the men's index, everything else. What's the reason for that?
Good question. I don't actually know. It's what the men wanted us to do. It was almost like, well, okay, we'll let you play on a Saturday, but you have to play as if you were a man. So you would have to play to the men's index and the men's tees. And actually, I think I heard there are a lot of responses in the article to this that I don't think that's actually allowed. I think that actually,
no,
yeah.
I can tell you it's not. No.
Yeah, but I raised this when I rejoined and with this Saturday lady membership. I raised this and I was like, I don't think this is allowed. And the female committee member, it's not, but it's kind of like what we have to do with like taking it one step at a time. It is something that we want to reopen discussions with the men about, because it shouldn't be allowed, but it was kind of like we'll just take what we can get at the minute, then come back to it in the future.
I understand it, because unfortunately a lot of things in members clubs are essentially political, and it's like you say, the first thing they wanted was access to golf on a Saturday, and you don't want to rock the boat or whatever else. But, no, but you know, in a competition and handicapping sense, your handicap is written and calculated from the ladies' tees. So to make you go and play from, you know, probably much longer tees, your handicap's wrong now, isn't it? Because if your handicap had been measured from those tees in the first place, by definition, every golfer in the world would have a higher handicap if they were forced to go and play, you know, God knows how many extra yards on the golf course. I don't think even the greatest players of all time would argue that you know, their scores would not be worse if they were forced to go backwards. But no, it's not allowed, and these are the problems when it's volunteers. Sometimes you get these things that don't match with what the rules are. You know, I remember years ago in a committee meeting, not long after I'd started work at one club, and we'd found a couple of things in the ladies section that wasn't correct. You know, let's say the Equality Act had maybe passed this club by, and you know, they said, "Oh, we've been doing it for 20 years." And I just remember saying in the meeting, well, you've been doing it wrong for 20 years then, unfortunately. You know, that is not allowed. I mean, I spoke to a friend of mine this morning who's joined a new club. He's had a couple of good rounds under his handicap, and he's done well, and he's really pleased about it. But he had an email through this morning telling him he'd been reduced by 8 shots on general play, based on 2 competitions with a bunkers of GUR. You know, and you just sort of say that's not allowed. They can't, you know, these committees can't just do whatever they like. There are rules governing these things. It's a really difficult one for your club, that, and for your lady captain, because she will be trying to get more for working members like you to get access to golf. And I understand totally what she means there with, well, we know it's not allowed, but, you know, it's either this or we wouldn't have got it through. That
Mm-hmm.
constant political battle. I have seen it the other way.
Yeah.
I love this story. Well, it's a club I used to work at. And those who are from this region will know who they are when I tell you the story. I've seen examples where ladies' day on a particular day of the week, and they would have the first tee until X time, call it midday. And every single lady player that's playing that day has teed off, played the entire 18 holes, and are now sat on the benches outside the clubhouse. And a man walked towards the first tee 10 minutes before the allotted ladies' time. And that man was shouted down to the point where he walked away and came back half an hour later. There wasn't a golfer on the golf course, but because these ladies had to fight so hard to get this tee allocation over years and years and years, they weren't going to give a man 10 minutes of it. You know what I mean? And I've sort of had a little admiration for it, even though logically it was ridiculous. I sort of think, well, yeah, you can sort of see in some of these ladies how much they had to fight for it. So it does spin the other way sometimes. But I'll be interested to see
It's funny
how that pans out for your club, really, because it's a step in the right direction, but it's almost an own goal straight away by making you do that.
Yeah, and it's actually really funny that you just brought that story up, because I think part of the reason the women aren't fighting it at the moment, is because they have men currently fighting to extend the ability to play on a Tuesday, which is women. Currently, we have the tee from 8:30 till 12:30, so only 4 hours out of the day on a Tuesday is dedicated to the women's competitions. But there are men saying, well, this might be a spare time halfway through that time, so why can't I have that? Why can't I play before 8:30 on a Tuesday? Even though that's green stuff out the course. So it's almost like the women are trying to hold off these men saying they have a right to play on a Tuesday, even though it's only 4 hours out of a Tuesday that they can't play. That I think they're willing to push the Saturday at the moment. And it's like you say, it's politics. Club golf is politics. You have to like really negotiate and concede some things if you want to maintain what you've got. But this is, I think, what makes me so frustrated and quite disappointed, actually, is the fact that you like you've just said, women have fought so hard for their ability to play at certain times, and break down some barriers and some restrictions that they once faced, that it makes me really sad that certain women, and I'm not saying it's all women because a lot of women are supportive of junior girls, but that some women still discourage girls from playing. I think I mentioned this in my article as well. We just brought it up earlier that junior girls can't win a board prize at my club. They could enter, they could play, they could actually, technically get the winning score, but they wouldn't be given the victory. Nor can they play on the ladies' teams, even if their handicap is the lowest in of the section and the junior girls. They won't get that spot. And it just strikes me, I think this is something else, when I said earlier, I would like to change attitudes, is that these women who have had their own journey to fight for, equality to play, aren't willing to stand and support their future generation. And it's nonsensical, really, because like I've been saying, if golf is to continue and grow, it needs to boost its number of junior girls. Surely women should see this and therefore support them. But in a lot of cases, dating as they're almost more vicious in some cases in the way that they discourage and the way they take junior girls to the side and have words with them, or don't take them out on the course and support them and educate them, and then absolutely negate them from the section. It doesn't help with the fact that if you're a single or a few girls at a club, if you already feel that you don't fit in because you're junior, you can't play with the junior boys, or you don't feel confident to, so you don't feel like you have a place in the junior section. Equally, you might not feel like you have a place in the ladies section,
Right.
which I think is really sad.
Yeah, I mean that almost makes it impossible to get any real number through if that's the experience that happens. I mean, I know. I mean, around teams and that sort of thing. I know that team golf. I don't know how it works in the English system necessarily, but in Wales, teams are picked on handicap. That's it. So it doesn't matter if your lowest handicap is actually a terrible match player. That person has to be, if they're available for the game, they have to be selected for the match. And what that creates is a culture of, particularly as lady golfers get older, is protecting their handicap to keep themselves low in the team. So if it's 3 qualifying scores a year to keep your handicap active, those players will play 3 times a year, and they'll choose when they play as well. They'll choose a time when conditions suit and there's no wind or rain or anything else, to make sure that they can maintain their handicap at a low level. And this is well known. I'm not telling anybody in Wales something they don't already know here, but that it also might explain things like rules like no juniors can play in the teams, because the people making those rules are quite often going to be of an age and one of these people that is thinking of, well, I love playing for the team. I don't want to be pushed out of it by some junior that, their handicap drops like a stone and all of a sudden I'm out of the team. It's very selfish reasons, I think, sometimes. Nothing to do with ladies sections, just within golf clubs that are like that sometimes. There's a club near me that for years and years and years, there was a very good golfer within this club who basically had a lot of power within it. And he would, every time someone would beat the course record, he would make sure that there were changes made to the golf course that winter, be it a new tee, lengthening of a hole, whatever, that would make it a new course. And he was then a good enough golfer to go out and score well on it. And he now is the course record holder again. So it doesn't just happen in ladies sections, that type of thing. But it's really sad when it's a junior that gets kicked by it. But when I was researching all of this, that, like I said, that thing Hannah Holden said on the National Club Golfer podcast was unbelievable to me, that she played for the county team before she played for a club team. I mean, fair play to her, because that's pretty dogged determination to push through a corrupt system, isn't it? To not be discouraged by that and just carry on anyway. But not many people would be like that. Most people, I think, would just say, "Oh, stuff this. I'll play a different sport.
Yeah.
I'll find something else to do." Unbelievable.
Definitely. I think, hearing that, especially the other week, made me almost really regret and kick myself a bit for giving up. I was like, if there are girls that persevered and made it through, why didn't I? Am I weak? Like, should I have fought more? But then in response to my article, I thought, well, I'm obviously not alone. That these girls that persevered are very unfortunately in the minority, and that most of who played and wanted to keep playing, we gave up, which is, really should be the other way around. But you're absolutely right. She was amazing and showed such grit and determination to keep playing.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good content online now as well, isn't there? That can encourage the young golfer, be that male or female. But it's not, and I think you can see. I love some of these accounts online of people who are actually not exceptional golfers, but they show that, look, there is a path for just the mere mortals of this world who just want to play golf socially or recreationally as well. I came across your tweet initially because it had been retweeted by Jasmine, Jazzy Golfer. And that's how it first appeared on my timeline, even though I follow National Golfer as well. And she's a great example. She puts a lot of content online about you know, the grassroots golf side of things, not, you know, the superhero on the television that you can't, you know, that you can't imagine ever playing as well as. And I think that maybe is something that we as clubs and national unions, we should make more use of people like Jasmine and like yourself writing articles like this now to try and drag people into the game for a taster. Because like all sports, we get tasters. Some people like it, some people don't. But once they like it,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's great to have peers, you know, among the mere mortals as well, because there's plenty of that in the men's game. Plenty of that. You know, the club champion in most golf clubs is, you know, is held, you know, really high regard, isn't he? And he walks into the bar and people flock towards him and that sort of thing. I don't think we've got nearly enough of those types of role models within golf either as well. We don't all have to look to Tiger Woods. We can just look to the club champion as a level that we could dream of getting to sometimes. And I hope there are
definitely.
more.
I mean, exactly. I completely agree with you. And I know I mentioned earlier that, you know, we need to see change at the top when it comes to female golf and like almost having female athletes as icons and examples. But you're absolutely right. It's not just that we have to see, you know, the top level of golf, the elite golf being shown as having female role models. We need to see it at a grassroots level as well. You may think any sport, like if you wanted to play tennis or just have a, you know, when we kick around with a football, most sports actually, you do it because it's fun, enjoyable, and it's got that social aspect. Whereas it comes to golf and you think, the first thing you think of is you've got to tiptoe around all these rules and politics just to play a sport. You don't get that in many other sports at all. And what we need to do is show to the girls and women who don't play that it is actually fun. You do have a social aspect to it as well. And I think taster sessions are great. A lot of clubs are actually doing, you know, taster sessions within a glass of prosecco or cake after in the clubhouse, and it just shows that, you know, this is exactly the type of things that we need to be introducing to show golf is fun, enjoyable, and welcoming for ladies and girls alike. Actually, any new members who are thinking of taking up the sport, that it's not what you see on the telly, but it's also, you know, it is changing. Club golf changing from this old-fashioned reputation that it's got to be something fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you keep going back to that sort of peer group idea that you know, we've kind of touched on throughout this recording, and it's interesting because I was at one club, but I ended up not working there long enough to see that through after this idea had come up. But we were working on the premise of almost, because of a lot of the problems that you've described, that we, as the people that worked there, identified, we were working off a plan of essentially creating an additional ladies section. So we wanted to get enough new lady golfers in that they would essentially not need, until they were at a certain level of playing golf, they wouldn't need the existing lady members in the club because they were well known as maybe not as welcoming as some clubs might have been. So, but we were almost just working off the premise that, look, we know this is a problem. We're not going to change these people. So let's create our own. And it was based entirely on the need to go and get, we were working off 12 to 18 was the number we were going to try and get of people to get in, and all the things you talked about, the social thing after the game of golf or after the lesson, you know, slice of cake, glass prosecco, cup of coffee, whatever it was. And those were all the things that we were working on together. So it's really interesting there to hear someone with your perspective all these years later that is essentially saying that really that probably was a good idea. And if I were working in a club where I thought that was a problem again, it's definitely an idea I would go back to sort of say, right, until you're a 30-odd handicap, you don't even need these ladies, because until you need to be playing in competitions, you don't need them. I've been lucky to work in clubs where they're fantastically welcoming as well. I mean, the club I'm at now, there's a good mix. Kingsdown Golf Club I work for in Wiltshire, they've done an unbelievable job of building their ladies section up, and that's golfers of all abilities, from beginner right through to seasoned golfers. But they're so welcoming. When a new lady member would come in, they would make it their business to get them up and put them into a tea time with various people and socialize with them afterwards. They put real effort into it, and their numbers went up something like 50% in 18 months when they were doing that. But it was entirely by them. No club initiative. I wasn't involved in any way with it other than taking the applications when they came in. These ladies said, we want to make it more welcoming for people like you when they come into the club. We want to make sure that they love it when they're here. I mean, they were doing my job for me. It was terrific.
That is so nice to hear that, you know, because that women out there are seeing that we can make this more welcoming for other ladies, and it is, at the end of the day, our responsibility as other members to make sure that everyone who is part of this club feels welcomed. Yeah. But I was thinking, it almost, I guess I focus a lot on this having a social peer group, because is this safety in numbers element, I think. And when I reflected as well in the article, and I think back, and I was like, well, what was the difference between me as a junior, a girl, and the juniors who were boys? And I was like, well, there was more of them. Yeah. And so naturally they could go out in their groups, and they really did feel just as intimidated by the older members who, you know, were very strict about the rules, or maybe not, just generalizing. But because they were doing it together and they had this social aspect, they probably thought, well, we don't care, it's going to go out and do it anyway. And if we make a mistake, we make a mistake, but we've got each other, and so we can learn. Whereas for me and a lot of girls who were probably the only or few girl members at a club, you didn't have that. And so I'd say a lot, I think still primarily attitudes need to change. And, you know, it's the member section needs to become more welcoming and stop being intimidating and scaring junior members away. But if it's still going to continue and we can't change that, because you can't force everybody to change their opinion, what we need to do instead is create this infrastructure where you can create peer groups in which they will have the confidence to carry on playing in spite of this intimidation. And I think that's a really important point, where I am so glad that I came back to the sport, and I'm now persevering. Even as a young woman now, I still feel the intimidation at times at my club, but I'm persevering in spite of that, because I do not have the ladies section and a few group of ladies who I'm now friends with and will play with regularly. And I was also so glad to see in my comments and reactions to the article that there are other girls who have done the same, and like similar to your friend who are now going to play again, that we are persevering, because if we don't, I don't think anything is going to change. No.
So what's good place to sort of wrap this up probably is, so you mentioned earlier on that, you know, it's not just going to be a one-off article because of the sort of feedback that you've had from it. There's obviously an appetite from people to read and engage in this type of conversation. There's a lot about ladies golf in the press at the moment. Like I say, you know, there's sort of advocates of pushing ladies golf forward of all abilities now springing up all over the place on social media, that sort of thing. I mean, like I mentioned, Jazzy Golfer, I'm desperate for her to break 90. I'm following this YouTube series she's running about, you know, her attempt to break 90, because I think it's so relatable to so many people. You know, there's sort of struggles and challenges she's going through just to break this mythical number that she's placed on herself. But so what's next with you now with regards to, you know, follow-up article or that sort of thing?
So we're running a series that I'm going to head up for National Club Golfer, and like you said, the fact that it's been a really great talking point in the press at the minute with Rose's ladies tournament, the comments about the tailor-made charity event, that it's almost acted as like a springboard to talk about this topic more, which it should have been talked about in the past, but we're going to talk about it now. And the idea of the series is to keep it everybody talking about women and girls golf, but not just focus on the negatives and what needs to change, but also I've spoken to a club pro, Alice Davis, at Parkstone Golf Club, about her own positive experience as a junior, the fact that she made it to county and kept playing, turned pro, and other positive things she's going to be doing, what she's doing, rather, to help get junior girls into golf. I'm also going to be looking to talk to people similar to me, women who were junior girls, and their own experiences, the differences that they may have experienced and what they think needs to be done, and maybe even look at current girl members, because look at their experience, because like I said earlier, experience I'm writing about now that was actually 10 years ago, so things probably have changed and progressed, but we're just going to look at the different levels and both positive and negative experiences that girls and women face in golf.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that that there is a follow-up now, that there's a desire to engage in a discussion about this. And I hope that all of these things that have fallen together, your article, the exposure in the press that started off as a negative thing of why weren't ladies involved in the charity match in America, has turned, I think, to quite a positive thing over the last 10 days or so. I hope this can gain some momentum now, and that it will filter down, and we will start to see peer groups being built at grassroots level, because it's not just about, oh, we've got 2 or 3 girls, that's fine, because what if those 2 or 3 don't get on? You've got to have enough girls that normal human behavior can dictate that I don't really like that person, I don't get on with them. Well, okay, there's 5, 6, 7 others to start with, and I think if we can all get to that, it would be a big step forward, wouldn't it? And if we get there, I think it might then, some of the other things, the more people that are playing golf, the more chance there is of, the next Annika Sorensen coming out and coming out of our country. Who knows? And positive role models. We've seen it in ladies football. We've obviously seen it in tennis for goodness knows how many years now. Athletics, there's that sort of thing. But I think one of the points you made at the very start of this is a good place to finish, really, and that we need to see more of these famous faces on the television, like we are now in football and those other sports I've mentioned. And let's hope that things like the work you're doing are the catalyst to push that forward.
Hope so.
Touch wood. Well, like I said, it's a good place to end it there, really. We've spoken for quite a while on it, and I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer if given the chance. But I want to thank you for coming on, because we set all this up quite quickly after I sort of read your article, because, as I say, it's a hot topic at the moment, and I'm sure there's some lessons in here for people that want to learn them from your experience, from the things we've spoken about, but also about your thoughts, really, for what we can do now moving forward. Because, like you say, the sort of older white man is very prevalent within golf. It's not that different in golf club management, I must say. So there are people that don't even have the experience that I had of my friend as a junior to draw on. So sometimes wouldn't even realise that these things are issues. So thanks for bringing it up, and I'll look forward to the upcoming articles.
No, thank you very much. I want to say thank you for having me on and for talking about a topic that is so important, and for highlighting that to everybody else.
Thanks very much. We'll end it there.
Thank you.
Thank you.